Hello everybody and welcome back to QuipScope. It's the show here on the TripleJump channel where we take a look at a new game that's just come out and give our thoughts all about it. My name is Peter.
And my name is Ben.
And today Ben is going to be telling us all about a brand new game, Ghosts of Tsushima.
It's a sashimi, but yeah.
Sashimi.
Yeah, it's a common misconception.
I am.
Yes, Ghosts of Tsushima is the name of the game. That's it. I wasn't sure if I was going to cover this on the channel initially, Peter,
right.
But it seems a couple of people asked on my stream last week about it because a lot of people are on the fence, I feel, because the reviews have been really good, but they haven't been, sort of you must buy this game at all costs sort of good.
Right.
So I've played maybe an hour and a half of it, so I'm really not that far into it, but I can certainly give my thoughts on the first little bit that I've played.
Right, yeah. So, see, I'm going into this QuipScope completely blind. Normally, when we talk about a game, even if I've not played it, I've probably, been following its development to some extent or other. But this game, not really been keeping my eye on because it's not really. I don't really have a penchant, as they say in France, penchant for this sort of thing. So my all I know is it's a Sony Interactive Entertainment game, published game, which is normally a good sign. And it's like an open world, third person, Japanese kind of martial arts kind of game, and you've got a katana.
Yes, it's not martial arts as such, but certainly, some nerd is going to correct me and say, actually, using the katana is a martial art, but you're not doing what you or I would consider martial arts.
You're not using your fists and feet.
You're not using fists and feet. No, absolutely not. So you bang on the money. It's an open world game. It's set in sort of, I can't remember what century, but a long time ago in Japan on the island of Sodor, the island of Tsushima, and I think in the game they pronounce the T, so I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but either way, it's made by Sucker Punch, the developers of Infamous and Sly Cooper, and they've been working on this game for a long time because this is it's technically their third game on PS4, but their second one was sort of like a spin-off of Infamous Second Son.
Right.
So they've been working on it for a while. They've shown off bits and pieces over the years, but I feel like the lead up to this, to launch, has sort of been why perhaps a lot of people are on the fence, because they haven't really shown off that much. They had the big state of play, I think last month or the month before, but even then it was showing off the world and not really talking about what the thrust of the game was as such. But essentially, the Mongols are invading Japan, and this is their first. The Isle of Tsushima is the first step on the way to the mainland of Japan, and your island gets taken over by the Mongol Empire, and you're the lone samurai left on the island. Everyone has been murdered or is being kept in nasty conditions or being threatened with their life and such and so on. And you basically make your way through the story on this open world, saving locals and collecting things and just doing lots of cool stabs and kills.
Okay. So it's not, I guess if it's an open world game, it's not your necessarily traditional PlayStation exclusive third-person game necessarily. That it's not your God of Wars or your Uncharted's.
No, this is closer to Horizon Zero Dawn than it is God of War, which was sort of open world, but it was far more sort of linear.
Yeah.
In its design. But yeah, and I'm hesitant to choose my language carefully here because I've been quite an outspoken critic of Ubisoft open world games and how it feels sort of like paint by numbers open world. And honestly, that is the same case here. But there's something about, perhaps just by virtue of the fact that it's not Ubisoft, and a lot of one of my big issues with Ubisoft open world games is that a lot of them feel the same. They have similar HUD, that sort of stuff. And while this game certainly has a lot of things to collect, I don't feel very overwhelmed. And the way it's designed almost feels intentional to not overwhelm you, or there's a very I'm trying to choose my words again very carefully. There's a very interesting and organic way that it sort of pushes you to explore the world. So as you saw in that state of play thing, if you watch that, there are birds that will fly around and you can follow the birds and they will lead you to secrets.
Right.
And you find foxes and you can follow foxes and they'll lead you to shrines. And if you swipe up on the touchpad, the wind will blow in the direction of your objective, for example.
Okay.
So there's all these different sort of dynamic systems in the world that stops you from needing a mini-map. You can still pause the game and look at a map. Stops you from, following a line on the ground or what have you. And it just, I don't know, there's just something, all the design comes together quite magically, actually, to create this almost mystical island, and it plays into all these themes that are in traditional Japanese folklore about samurai and that kind of stuff, and it feels quite grounded while also feeling quite fantastical.
Right.
And the combat's also great. It's good that when you first enter like a settlement as I said, there's a lot of paint by numbers open world stuff in this game, so there are places to liberate and so on. When you first approach a group of enemies, for example, you can initiate a standoff, and you can hold triangle and stand there with your hand on your katana. And as soon as they make a move, you can let go, and you'll immediately do one of those really cool samurai movie things where you'll do a lethal slash immediately and kill them in one hit, and you will startle and alarm your other foes, at which point you can fight them. There's square for standard attack, triangle to break the guard of enemies with shields. You can dodge, you can block, you can parry by pressing block at the right time, that sort of stuff. It's all fairly standard fare, but I think it's the flavor of this game, that being traditional samurai, that actually sort of elevates it for me to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was going with my initial, sort of probing, was that, it's not, I can tell that it's not a God of War, for example, or even a Last of Us, but to what extent was it sort of a Ubisoft style open world game? But it's good. That's nice. The sound of the organic stuff. More games should do that, really, rather than just have loads of HUD and compasses and lines and markers and things. That's an interesting way of doing it for sure. Talking of the sort of the beauty of this game and the visual, it's got quite an aesthetic to it from what I've seen, this game, and according to social media, which is bombarding me with such beautiful content, the photo mode in this game is seemingly very good. Is that right? Am I right?
Yes.
To say that?
You're absolutely right. This game is absolutely stunning, and it's strange because it really has the unenviable task of following up The Last of Us Part 2. And I know that game divided opinions. Lots of people have finished it now, and there are lots of fair criticisms of the game out there. But one thing you can't deny is that from a presentation standpoint, that game is unprecedented. And this is a tough act to follow for Sucker Punch, because there are things that you see where you'll be running along in sort of in gameplay, and then it'll fade to black and then fade back up and it'll be a cutscene, and you think, Naughty Dog don't do that. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's not a problem. I feel like there's no way that, from their positioning in terms of release schedule, there was no way they weren't going to be compared to The Last of Us Part 2, at least from a presentation standpoint. And I feel like that might have done them something of a disservice in terms of reviews, because this game is really, really beautiful. The different times of day, the weather, I feel like there's sort of quite a high contrast color palette in terms of vegetation and, blossom trees and lush green fields and the sea and the sun setting and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, the photo mode really lets you show that off, because this is probably the most advanced photo mode I've ever seen. You just need to press a button on the D-pad. It brings up a whole menu of options, including your standard stuff like moving the camera around. You can change the expression of Jin, the protagonist. You can remove his mask or put it back on. But then there's other stuff like changing the time of day, changing the weather, changing the render mode, which I know is a fairly standard one. But there's also, you can change even the particles that are blowing around in the wind and how many there are. Particles being leaves or weather effects. And then if you choose leaves, you can choose different types of leaves. And there's so much that you can adjust. And I think it really shows off what a pretty game it is. And I'm not that far into it, as I said. I haven't got to the part where I've sort of adopted the ghost mantle. I'm still sort of stubbornly sticking to my samurai origins and facing people honorably in combat. Jin is quite vocal about the fact that he doesn't want to use sneaky tactics, but clearly that point in the game will come. And from what I understand and what was made clear in the state of play is that you can choose between what you want to do and you can mix and match, and that's not a problem. So I haven't got that far yet. I've messed around in the open world a bit. I've played obviously the opening. I've had a fair bit of time on with hands-on with the combat, and I think again it's difficult for this game to follow up such a critical success like The Last of Us Part 2. I can't understate that. I think that this really was positioned, I think, quite poorly in terms of its release by Sony. I feel like it should have come out before The Last of Us, so it stood a better chance. But I absolutely adored Spider-Man, and that game scored in the mid-80s on Metacritic, and so has this game. So there's a very good chance that even if you're remotely interested in Ghosts of Tsushima, it's going to have a lot to offer you. And it's just a very competently put together open world game that has a lot of interesting ideas while leaning on some quite, tired stereotypes of open world games. But having said that, all those tired stereotypes in terms of collectibles and sort of, checkbox ticking and visiting shrines and all that kind of stuff, they all push towards progression. You get skill points, you get charms, you unlock different things. It's all worth doing. So you do feel as you go through the world that you want to follow the sparrow that's just flown across the screen, and you want to go and chase the fox and see where he goes. So for that, I do have to applaud them, because if it was Far Cry and it was just, here's a question mark on the map, I suppose, should I go there? I don't know. Maybe I will. Actually, no, I can't be bothered. That's very different from, oh my god, that's a fox. I'm gonna follow the fox. Let's follow the fox. I just think it's very clever. It's a very clever bit of design.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds it. So it looks good. It plays well by the sounds of it, both in terms of combat and, sort of mixing the quote-unquote map markers into the world rather than just having them brazenly in the HUD. But the story that you've described so far, I know you say you're not so into it. I guess my last question is, do you care about that? Is that, is it just a game that looks good and plays well, but where does the story come into it in your mind? Are you hooked, or are you kind of just thinking, sure, okay, fine? How are you finding the narrative itself?
This was my main concern before the game came out, because I feel like this is what they talked about the least, is the story and the character and why any of this was happening or what was going on. All I knew is that there's been a Mongol Empire invasion, and that's it. That's all I knew. Whereas now, having played through the opening, which is quite cinematic, and you will have seen a bit of footage of that, I might put it up now, for example. These guys have come to your island, murdered everyone. They're dishonorable, which is completely against everything that the samurai stand for, and it's just plain rude, quite frankly. Yes. So there is, I do feel an element of wanting to get revenge, but the thrust of the story, as I currently, as far in as I am, is that your lord, I should say. And I don't want to talk too much about specifics. I mean, no. Again, this game is not like The Last of Us Part 2 where it's going to rely too heavily on the story, but your lord has been captured and you want to go and rescue them. You try to go and rescue them. You get completely overpowered by the person who is currently being positioned as the antagonist, who is some sort of big bad, I think grandson of Genghis Khan.
Oh, right, okay.
Is the antagonist here. and he's very well spoken, and he's studied the local language, and he's just trying to get people to surrender so it can be as peaceful as possible. But obviously, you know what? Screw that. No, we don't want to surrender. So he gets quite violent and nasty.
Right.
And I've only played chapter 1. Last night, when I got to the open world, it said, here is where chapter 2 starts, and I rode my horse in the opposite direction just so I could experience some of the open world. But it seems... I don't know, actually. I can't really make a conclusive judgment just yet. I think if you're looking for an open world game that's not too overwhelming, that's meticulously designed and has some interesting ideas, but perhaps story isn't the most gripping thing in the world, then this is going to be for you. But as it currently stands, I want to go back and play it, which is a good sign. I'm looking forward to playing some more tonight, but I can't say specifically whether or not the story is really gonna hook anyone.
Sure, but overall, sounds good. Sounds worth checking out. If, as you say, if anyone's got even just some interest in this, maybe it is worth giving a go.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, that's about the end, but it just leaves us enough time to thank you for watching and listening, and to remind you to subscribe and so on, but also to say ghosts of Tsushima, more like ghosts of sue me. As in sue me. If this game's good, sue me. Just
brilliant.
Sue me.
Brilliant. I will sue you.
Yeah.
Ghosts of Tsushima, more like ghosts of you and me, she, ma, because it's like, it's like a family affair because everyone comes together because it's so much fun and everyone wants to play it together. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you, me, her, mother.
Yeah.
All of us together. Ghost of Tsushima, more like, I keep saying ghosts plural for some reason. I don't know why I thought it was that.
I think I did too, actually.
Yeah, it's singular seemingly.
Just the one ghost, actually.
Yeah. Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Did we do it?
I think so.
That was a tough one to QuipScope.
It was, yeah. Real difficult quips.
All right. Okay. Bye, everyone.
But bye.